Hello and welcome to Talk Spooky to Me, the Ghost Story Guys mail show. I'm Brennan Storr.
I'm Paul Bestall.
And this is the show where we get a chance to hear from you, our audience. Paul, my friend, how are you doing?
I'm very well. I'd just like to say thank you to Canada for the wildfire smoke that is giving us amazing sunsets and sunrises. So thank you.
I mean, I guess you're welcome. I don't think New York felt the same way, or much of the U.S. Eastern Seaboard.
Yes, well, it's too high up here, but it's just giving us amazing sunrises and sunsets. So it's quite pretty in that regard. But yes, a bit strange that it's got all the way here, but that's how it is. That's wind for you.
I remember about 10 years ago, there was these massive forest fires in China. And when the particulate finally blew over here, I was told this, so if this is wrong, hey, blame the guy who told me this. But essentially it caused this really incredible lightning storm. Mm. Something about friction, I don't know, science words. But Victoria never gets storms, or very rarely gets storms. And Nikki, my wife, she specifically loves thunderstorms. I do too, because we used to get them in Revelstoke, but she loves them because she never really got much of them in the UK. And the one massive, once in a lifetime, hopefully, thunderstorm that happened here happened the day we went up island to another town. Sometimes she'll still wake up in the middle of the night screaming about missing out this one, this massive thunderstorm. It'd be funny if it wasn't so sad. No, actually, it is still pretty funny.
Well, you can tell her that I was woken up the other weekend by some thunder.
Somehow I don't think that's going to improve the situation.
Yeah, we usually have perhaps, I don't know, 1 or 2 a year.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right.
Thunder snow's the best. That's brilliant.
Yeah, those are the trumpets of the apocalypse, or what you're hearing, Paul. That's not thunder. It's the angel Gabriel blowing the horn. I'm just kidding. That's the second apocalypse joke I've made in as many shows. I got to lighten up on that shit. I don't really think it's the end of the world, folks. I just have a very bleak sense of humor.
It's a phase. You will grow out of it. I was very into the apocalypse when I was younger.
I mean, it's nice being described as younger, so thank you for that. I just had a moment the other day where I had a shirt on with a couple buttons open, and I was petting Bodie, one of our cats who's got gray fur. And I went into the bathroom and I thought, oh shit, I got a bunch of Bodie's fur on my chest. Nope, that was just my chest hair poking through. Coming back from what is an amazing edit that I wish I could share with our audience, but we cannot. It's time to check the mail.
Our courteous and efficient staff is on call 24 hours a day to serve all your supernatural elimination needs.
We're ready to believe you.
Our first message is from Hurley. And Hurley says, I was driving to work, an hour or so commute early in the morning on a windy, twisty road on the Sunshine Coast. Brennan mentioned deer all over Vancouver Island, and I chuckled, so I used to live in Duncan and Shawn Lake, so I know the damn deer. Then there was the mention of Volvos and the elk test, and I shit you not, as I come around the corner, there's a herd of elk standing in the middle of the road. The only way this would make this story greater is if I drove a Volvo. Sadly, I do not. I drive a Chevy, but I passed the elk test. Keep up the great job. I'm happy I heard a recommendation from you guys from Mike Brown on the Dark Routine podcast. You guys are great, and look forward to continuing to catch up on the episodes. Hurley.
Well, thank you very much, Hurley. And that's awesome you heard about us from Mike. Mike is a cool guy. He's got a great show with Dark Poutine. And of course, the second season of Supernatural Circumstances just dropped. In fact, if you're listening to this, you probably, and you're not a patron, because if you're a patron at patreon.com/ghoststoryguys or via Apple Podcasts, you don't have to listen to any ads. But if you're not, you would have heard an ad for Supernatural Circumstances, at the beginning of the show. So yeah, very cool guy. Morgan's awesome too.
Yep, they've got some amazing guests this second season.
I hear there's a particular Englishman who is really great at what he does. Paul Sinclair. No, I'm kidding.
Nick Pope.
I wouldn't do that to you. That's just mean. That would be divorce time. That's fair. It's really cool too, Hurley, hearing from folks on Vancouver Island. A lot of folks assume our audience is primarily Canadian, but it's actually not. The majority of our audience is from the U.S. I would say about 75% of our audience from the U.S. and maybe about 10% from Canada, 5%, maybe 8% from Canada. So it's always cool for me to hear folks on Vancouver Island liking the show. You're on the Sunshine Coast, I guess. I actually worked for a guy from the Sunshine Coast, and he told me this great story. You know the band Loverboy, of course, Paul.
Who doesn't?
Okay. So I am pretty sure that Mike Reno from Loverboy, if I'm not mistaken, he spent some time living on the Sunshine Coast when he was younger. As I recall correctly, my old boss, Doug, told me the story that when he was in his maybe late teens, early 20s, he got into doing Loverboy. And it was one of those things where people would ask his parents, how's your son's music career working out? And then eventually it was, oh no, it's actually, he's doing really well. You're an asshole for asking. and I got to say, I saw Loverboy in 2010 or 11 maybe. They were opening for Journey here in Victoria, and they were the highlight of the show, to be honest with you. They were fantastic. At whatever age Mike Reno, he had to be in his 50s at that point, all those guys, they killed it. It was a brilliant show.
Yes. Well, I had an excellent weekend of watching old people sing at Glastonbury, so I know the feeling.
Oh, were you at Glastonbury, or you were watching it online?
No, I was watching it on TV. It's shown on the BBC
okay.
here. So I was watching lots of pensioners sing.
My brother-in-law was there with a couple of his cousins. They rented those yurts or whatever. And I got to say, it looked like hell.
It's only 200,000 people now. What's wrong with you?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Hard pass.
Yeah, it was very surreal. Guns N' Roses were weird.
Yeah, so someone said Guns N' Roses was getting some weird notices. What was up with that?
They were on for nearly 3 hours.
Okay, I mean, when we saw them in Vancouver, that's about what they did, was 3 hours.
Which is incredible. They had some real problems with Axl's mic. It kept blowing, kept dropping out all the time. But musically, they were phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Okay.
You couldn't take your eyes off them. I thought, well, I couldn't anyway. It drew me in. But it was quite funny. He came on and he was like, rah, 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 rah. And then he just set off running. Like he was being chased by a bear. And he just ran. I was like, stop running about, man. It was like he was doing a bleep test. So that was the Saturday, and then we watched Elton John's last ever performance in the UK on the Sunday night.
That must have been something.
It was basically, he started with Pinball Wizard, and he never really stopped, and he did 2.25 hours, and he just went...
Wow.
Just hit after hit after hit, and he hardly played anything he's released in the last 30 years.
Oh, really?
So it was all his 70s and 80s stuff.
I got to say, missing Elton John when he was here in Victoria, I mean, the price was just beyond my reach at that point, but that's one of my big concert regrets. One of my few concert regrets. One of the things I had a chance to see and I blew it, or couldn't do it rather, and I do regret missing that one.
3 songs in, he had 150,000 people eating out of the palm of his hands, and it's the biggest crowd I've ever seen watch an act at Glastonbury. They were spilling out. There were thousands and thousands of people coming. Brilliant.
That's cool.
You know what I mean? So we were contemplating, though. We were a bit worried when he did Candle in the Wind, because obviously they've got these enormous screens, so there was all this kind of artwork and video and stuff going on behind him. So you're a bit like, oh god, who's gonna pop up here? But thankfully, it was stuck to the original intention of that song. So it was Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, that's cool. I think it would have been tasteless otherwise.
It's the UK.
Yeah, okay, yeah. If we really want to do it UK style, Princess Diana's going to come out with a steel chair and hit Meghan Markle. Give her the Stone Cold Stunner. That is like, if we're going to do that, fine. Then bring up Princess Diana. This next one's from Ian D. Ian says, I've been meaning to write in for a while, but thought this email would be a bit of an aimless ramble. Hey, that's fine. Well, welcome to the show, Ian, especially as Talk Spooky. Now you've decided to make a separate show for emails. I thought it was a perfect chance to write in. Oh, there we go. Hey, read ahead, Brent. Read ahead. Back in January, my wife went on one of her girly weekends with a few of her friends, where they hire out a lodge or apartment in the country and partake in wholesome activities such as drinking Prosecco, soaking in the hot tub, and just generally having a girly catch-up. This, of course, left me home alone for the weekend, so I used the time wisely to partake in a variety of activities such as meeting up with an old friend for some drinks, going to watch Wolves actually win a football match, and playing a few games of FIFA on the PlayStation. In an activity that may be of more interest to Brennan, on the Friday night, I decided to visit a microbrewery pub in the local town of Wellington. The pub is imaginatively named The Boot, and for a while they had been promoting their newly opened kitchen, and a pint and a poutine offer for a reasonable £9.50. I'd heard Brennan mention poutine a few times, and having a weakness for junk food, I figured what's not to like about chips, cheese curds, and gravy, so I went for it, and I was pretty impressed. One final thing I did over that weekend was to watch a spooky film that had been recommended to me by a guy at work. the film being I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, starring Ruth Wilson. I very much enjoyed the film as it wasn't a festival of predictable jump scares, but a very subtle, eerie, and atmospheric tale. Probably wasn't a great idea watching it in the dark whilst home alone. I wondered whether either of you had seen the film and what your opinion of it was. Thanks for producing such a great show, guys. It's the one I really look forward to being released every fortnight. Well, Ian, thank you so much, man. That's really cool. Paul, just we'll start with the late question there, or the last question. Have you seen I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House?
No, I have not. I am aware of Ruth Wilson, though.
I saw her in Luther. That's kind of where I'm familiar with her.
Yes.
But I think she was also in The Lone Ranger. I think she was the female lead in The Lone Ranger, if I'm not mistaken.
Nobody wants to remember that, mate.
I kind of like that movie. I know.
It's one of the strangest films I've watched. It's one of them you think, why is this film 2 hours and 40 minutes long?
You're not wrong there. There was absolutely, that was a weird time for Disney. That time for Disney is what, actually, I guess Disney's still going through it because they keep making expensive-ass movies that not enough people are going to see. But anyways, so no, I haven't seen it either, Ian. Although I will say, I'll trade you. Check out Brooklyn 45 on Shudder. We just did it for Weird Together. That episode will be out next week. Or I guess when this comes out, it'll be out Wednesday. And yeah, it's a really great it's not even a haunted house film. It's like a paranormal drama in a way. It's really, really good. But as for poutine, yeah, poutine's, it's amazing. And it's, for those of you who are being smart-assy, it's not cheesy chips. It is a very different thing.
It's cheesy chips and gravy.
Get out. I have no son. We ordered poutine, Nick and I, a couple nights ago. And I'll admit, of course, I'm going to be that guy. I was living in Montreal for 8 months. I've had great poutine. This wasn't that. But it was still pretty good. And there's something about the squeaky cheese curds. Have you had that, Paul?
I have had poutine, yes.
Yeah. So it's just something about that. It's just a very satisfying on like a spiritual level. So even if it's not the best, it's like, I'm not going to say that. People are tired of hearing me talk about sex. But poutine is great. Even bad poutine is still good poutine. It's still poutine. Let's put it that way.
Next up is a message from Deirdre from YouTube. And Deirdre says, amazing. I live in the Cowichan Valley, and I am thrilled to hear about our end times from another islander. I am so glad I came across your channel.
Thank you, Deirdre. Again, another Vancouver Island listener.
Also from YouTube is Tord, and Tord is short, sweet, and to the point. He says, great show. And you're right, Tord.
You have excellent taste.
Next up is Miranda. I thought about sending that story in for some time, and I got a minute to draft it this past Friday whilst work was slow. I wasn't sure I'd actually pull the trigger, but as I wrapped up, I knocked over the empty I Love Canada mug my best friend had given me years ago. And then, as I was leaving the office, at which I never see more than a magpie or a duck on campus, there was a Canadian goose in my path outside. Luckily, I did not have to throw down with the hissing hellion, but I thought there were too many signs from the universe to ignore it. Then, on the way home, the Bluetooth in my car picked up what I'd been listening to last on Spotify, which was Ghost Story Guys, and then queued up the Mythical Dream episode. Serendipitous. I've been listening to the pod in chronological order these past couple of weeks as I've run out of fresh episodes from the Paul Graced era, and oddly enough, this episode was not next on the list. Whenever the universe speaks, I try to listen. Speaking of listening to the universe, if you'll humour me, I'm about to practically write you a novel, Brennan. Synchronicities have been raining down on me with pretty violent loyalty since the advent of 2023. I've come to the conclusion that I have to go to West Virginia this year. I'm not sure what awaits, but the universe has been loud and clear. Recent readings have also suggested that there may be a past life element involved, which I'm holding a healthy skeptical curiosity about. Following a ridiculously dense period of weirdness and coincidences, of which I do not believe in, suddenly it all went quiet. I began to question if what I had been experiencing was real, and if I really am meant to seek out what awaits me in West Virginia, which is a long drive away as I live in Colorado. Then one day, as I was engrossed in Minecraft, episode 127, The Call of Dreams, began. It picked up somewhere in the middle of the episode, as though it had begun at another time, though I don't recall. Several things you and Kev mentioned pricked my interest. I took a screenshot of the episode with the intention of revisiting it again later when I could give it my undivided attention. Then, as the episode unfolded, I was floored by how profoundly it hit me over and over again. I hadn't heard of your Pennsylvania connection before, but I was in awe since, as I mentioned, I seem to be mysteriously tugged to a state that I have no logical connection to. I really hope that you continue keeping us updated on your Pennsylvania story, as I'm sure it will continue to unfold, and perhaps eventually chronicle your experience in book form at some point. Wink, wink. I don't know if you also experience this, but I tend to tear up when a paranormal story hits my spooky bone just right. My best friend also gets this as well as the sudden urge to poop. Corporal living is strange. Anyway, as you were recounting your hypnosis session, I started bawling at the part when Hypno Bren said he'd been trying to use Maryland as a red herring, but that you kept up picking the real trail back to Pennsylvania. Absolute chills. P.S. You've mentioned that you worked in a grocery store once upon a time that your family owned. I know I will be disappointed, but I still vehemently hope it was called The Store.
Miranda, no, it was not called The Store. It was called Bocce's. Bocce's Groceteria. I think it was called Bocce's because there was a bocce pitch not too far away.
There's an area of Sheffield called High Stores.
It's probably very classy.
No, it's not.
Yeah, okay, no, that's more accurate. I was hoping. As for the Pennsylvania connection, Miranda, nothing else has happened in a while. You know, I haven't, like with the pandemic, obviously I didn't do any traveling. And then when I was living in Montreal, I actually thought I might get down to Pennsylvania, but it turned out to be just too expensive for me to travel. I could afford to live in two places, just barely. Actually, I couldn't even afford that. I definitely dug myself a little hole, but traveling would have dug an even deeper hole. So I didn't get to go down there. But I am hoping that something shakes loose, just because it's a fascinating thread, right? I will say, don't go, if you do go to West Virginia, don't go expecting anything crazy to happen, because when I went to Pennsylvania those multiple times, everything that happened, as you heard in that episode, it was very subtle. There was never a big reveal. There was never an aha moment. It was just more like, oh, okay, this is a thing that happened. And it's super cool. And again, I still feel that connection to Pennsylvania, although I'm told it's changed quite a bit. I'm told that the general tenor of the whole place has really gotten a lot worse, a lot angrier since the 2016 election. I interviewed someone for Largely the Truth, which I still haven't put that show out, but he was telling me that it's just it's become a much angrier place, a much more divided place, Pennsylvania. So yeah, if you do go to West Virginia and something happens, please do let us know.
Try camping on Chestnut Ridge.
Oh, there you go. Will we be filing a missing persons report here, Paul?
No, it's a hotspot of strange activity of UFOs and Bigfoots and everything.
Okay, so potentially missing persons.
Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Can't go missing if you don't go there.
I don't know if that's the recommendation you think it is.
What's the worst that could happen?
There you go, Miranda. Think about that. What's the worst that could happen?
Swooped on by Mothman.
Yeah, like an osprey taking away a fish in Odell Lake.
Or like that poor boy in the 70s attacked by a giant bird who carried him.
I don't think I know that story.
I've forgotten his name now. He got bullied at school. He was called Bird Boy after the incident. But his mother and the 3-4 of him and some friends are in the back garden, about 10 years old. And then a giant bird just swooped down and picked him up, ripped his shirt and carried him for a while. And the mum's screams made the bird drop him and it flew off. And They said it was the biggest bird they'd ever seen. It was essentially a thunderbird. And nobody believed them. They all thought they were lying or they'd made it up. They kept his shirt that was ripped. So he was clearly attacked by something rather large. And they were just, it was just a normal, what women are like.
Oh, boy.
It's probably a pigeon.
Christ on a bike.
But, it's a very, very famous thunderbird. Probably the best thunderbird witnessed event in the modern era, I would suggest.
And sorry, where was that?
Lawndale, California, 1977.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting. I'll have to look that up.
But yes, he got bullied and was called Bird Boy at school.
As if it's not bad enough that you're going to get taken away by a goddamn bird, then you get mocked by idiots.
Yes.
Well, Miranda, if you go to West Virginia, you got to promise us you're not going to be abducted by a giant bird.
Or Mothman.
Or Mothman. Next up is from Kelly. Kelly says, "Hey guys, you need to do a deep dive into McCamey Manor in Tennessee. It's run by someone who enjoys torturing people, pulling their teeth out, and other sadistic things. He makes you go through a psych eval and medical exam before you go on one of his tours. and repeatedly tells his clients you really don't want to do this. There's a 40-plus page waiver you have to sign and a waiting list of thousands of people who want to experience it. He only accepts bags of dog food as payment and claims to donate it to a greyhound rescue as a tax write-off. Yeah, Kelly, I mean, I'm familiar with McCamey Manor. Are you familiar with McCamey Manor, Paul?
Yes, it was on, was it Dark Tourist?
Probably.
Show that was on Netflix a few years ago.
Yeah, it's kind of outside our purview, Kelly, I'll be honest with you. And the other way I feel about McCamey Manor is, you can't save some people. I've read several articles about McCamey Manor. I've listened to interviews with people who've done it. And when I was a younger guy, Paul, I used to try and save people. I would, I think I'd try, my friends and my loved one, my partners. I would try and I would always attract to people who were kind of fucked up and needed help. And it always and I myself was fucked up, So I was no saint, but I was always trying to you can do this. I'll encourage you. We'll be better. You'll be better. I'll help you. And what I realized is you can't do that. You can present people with options and you can encourage them to take the better option, but you can't make them be better. They have to make that choice. And McCamey Manor, man, fucked up people got to go somewhere, I guess. Thanks for writing, Kelly. And again, it's a place that exists, and I sure as shit wouldn't be doing it. And if someone in my life was like, I'm going to go do that, they would not be in my life because that person is more fucked up than I can, am comfortable being around.
Next, we've got another comment from YouTube there, flowing in today. And this is from Penguin, who says, the Dr. Mario on the Wii is my favouriteest game ever. I've been listening since episode 4, and I love it. Hi from PDX. Many McMenamins are haunted. The Baghdad Theatre has a bathroom downstairs that's spooky as fuck. I'll have to write in with my Portland and Miami stories one day.
I did not realize there was Dr. Mario for the Wii. I might actually still have a Wii lying around somewhere. I should drag that out, see if it still works. I was going to buy us a Switch when I got back. Then some friends of mine who were living in a place that is experiencing a really brutal heat wave, I lent them the money to buy an air conditioner instead. So, I don't get a Switch, but also they don't die of heat exposure. So, hey, everyone wins.
Yeah. All I'll say is PlayStation for life.
I mean, I have a PlayStation, absolutely. But, the Wii like Nintendo stuff, like Breath of the Wild, the Zelda games, I've heard so much about those, I kind of want to give them a shot.
What's Nintendo?
Fair.
Well, they did invent the Game Boy, which is always good if you were stuck in the bathroom for a bit.
One last thing on the subject of video games. Nick, because again, Nick actually likes video games a lot more than I do. She has a subscription to PlayStation's cloud gaming service. I think it was called PS Now. I think they've changed it to something else. But I pretty much played the hell out of Assassin's Creed Origins. I need to find something new. And so I went on there and I thought I'll just, instead of paying $70 for a new game, I'll cloud game something. And my cousin Mike and I were talking about this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, which is a side-scrolling beat-em-up game in the style of the old Ninja Turtles arcade games, which, of course, I fondly remember as a kid going to the arcade, playing, pumping quarters into this thing. And so they had it on this cloud gaming service, so I downloaded it. And I played it for an hour and I was bored. So I'm glad I didn't buy the whole goddamn thing, because it turns out that playing our side-scrolling arcade beat-em-ups is a young man's game.
Streets of Rage.
Exactly. Yeah, I loved Streets of Rage when I was a kid, but I don't know. I can only hit square so many times before I think, this sucks. I want to do something else. Most
of the time I end up playing Lego Marvel superheroes.
And Nick loves the Lego games. She's got this, she calls it her accuracy thing. And so she has to 100% all the Lego games. And she'll go through and 100% every single, like the Lego Star Wars, Lego Harry Potter, Lego, whatever the fuck. She's bought it, and I'll buy them for her birthday or whatever, and she'll just plow through it for hours. I love her commitment, because once I play through a game, generally, I'm done.
I share that addiction of trying to smash it to pieces. One of the reasons why I'm playing them again, because I didn't do that. So I'm like 83% on one and 96 on the other.
The only time I'll do that with a game is if I really like the world, like Grand Theft Auto 5. I will play that. I finished the story mode, 4 years ago. But I'll just go for drives in the world. I'll go play darts in a bar in the country. I won't kill anyone. I won't do anything crimey. I just drive around in virtual Los Angeles,
Yeah. I used to do that a lot on Vice City. Jump in a car and just drive around.
Oh, really?
Listening to great tunes.
Well, you could be in luck, because I've heard that 6 is returning to Vice City.
Oh, I hope so. I hope they set it in the 80s. Take it back. It was brilliant, that.
Oh, yeah. The only thing I preferred about 5 to Vice City, really, and 4, this is the thing I think that they didn't get right until part 5, was more definite mission structures. So you can actually see you can look back and go, okay, I finished X, Y, and Z. Because the way my brain works, I need to have the completion buzz from finishing something. And so just waiting around till Nico calls me to go bowling or whatever, it's like, no, I can't do this. I need definite proof that I have advanced through the story. Remember was it San Andreas? They added that stupid mechanic where you had to work out. Guys, I can barely manage that in my own life. Never mind in a fucking video game.
Yeah, or go and eat stuff.
Yeah. Again, I barely remember to feed myself.
Yeah, I did that the other day. Julie said, what have you eaten today? Because she'd been in the office. And I went, oh, I forgot to eat.
Yep.
I've had some coffee, though.
The only reason I've had food today is because I was bummed out this morning. And usually if I'm bummed out in the morning and it's been a while, I'll go to Floyd's around the corner, the diner. So I did that because I was like, I'm kind of depressed. I just want to get out of the house. Someone will make breakfast for me. They know exactly my order when I walk in. They're all very friendly. But if not for that, I still haven't eaten lunch. And that, it's, creeping up on dinner time here.
Yes, well, I made us a lovely beef in black bean sauce stir fry.
Ooh, nice. Next up is Ava. Ava says, hey guys, I enjoy your podcast so much. I heard of you guys from the 100th episode of They're Not Shadows, and I was looking for a new podcast, and I'm very glad I did. Being a teenager in the Midwest of America, let's just say there isn't very much to do before my schedule gets busy before marching band starts. I've just sat for most of the day listening to you guys. It never gets old. I appreciate your support to the people that need it, and with being part of the LGBTQ plus community in a place where that isn't very popular, hearing unwavering support does so much. I love when you guys talk about movies and music, even though I may not know who you're talking about, but it's always fun. I personally don't have any stories, but the suburbs of Missouri aren't a very interesting place. I've always been called an old soul because ever since I can remember, I've always loved vintage fashion, 50s and 60s music, and the like. At the time of sending this, I turned 15 yesterday. I don't know if there's anything like spiritual behind that, like when little kids still see long-deceased family members. Sorry if this sounds rambly, I'm not known for being a great writer. I like your skepticism about some of the stories you send. If you read this, thank you. I'm sorry you had to read that. Ava, you never have to apologize for yourself. Never once. That wasn't rambly in the slightest. You should see some of the emails I write, Jesus. And, I bet if you look around, look through the newspapers. You can go to newspapers.com or something. Sometimes you can get free access through your library. I bet if you look through newspapers, I bet some shit has happened in your suburb somewhere. I grew up in a town of 7,500 people in the middle of nowhere, and I found, an entire book's worth of ghost stories. I suspect if you look hard enough, you'll find something.
Yep. Somebody who lived on the street behind where I live now saw a disembodied head float across their front room in the 1980s, so you just never know.
Jesus, yeah, there, exactly. And and just to reiterate, Paul and I are both, we are both 100% supportive of the LGBTQ plus community. That is, without a doubt, we are very much here for our trans brothers and sisters and non-binaries and everyone. We love you all, and if anyone says otherwise, tell them to go fuck themselves. Or tell us and we'll go kick their asses.
Certainly will.
I think it's legal, like to say that. I mean, we're not referring to a specific person. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Watch out.
And if you're listening to this and you think, oh, guys, what is this woke bullshit? You're on the wrong side of history, man, and we love you, but you got to fix your heart. So we're not going to tell you to fuck off. We're not going to do that, but we're going to say you got to learn. You got to be better. Because there are folks trying to convince you otherwise, that being just miserable and hateful is somehow righteous. It's not. They've got an agenda, and it costs nothing to be decent. It costs nothing to be kind. Just be kind.
Next is a message from Brittany, who says, I really love the podcast. I'm semi-new to listening, but I'm a huge fan. I was listening to your February the 6th episode, An Old-Fashioned Haunted House, and I was pretty stoked to hear Brennan talk about Perkins in Kelowna. I grew up in Salmon Arm, not far from Revior, Kelowna, and I have the exact same experience with the restaurant. My mum loved their breakfasts, and it always felt so fancy being Kelowna, and getting to go to Perkins for breakfast with my family. They had the absolute best pancakes. Part of the reason that I enjoy the podcast so much is because of the local notes here and there. I now live on Vancouver Island, a few hours north of Brennan in Victoria, so hearing about BC in general is the best. I was at first introduced to your podcast when looking for stories about Vancouver Island on Spotify, so imagine my delight when I found your episode, hearing a short story about my city and being told by a local. That rocked. Again, huge fan. Thanks for all the stories and for sharing Brennan's amazing laugh with the world.
Well, thank you, Brittany. That's really sweet and very. I'm blushing a little bit. I swear. That's very nice. And again, super cool. Yet another listener from Vancouver Island, which is that's the best. Do you have? Are you a breakfast guy, Paul? Do you like? I mean, obviously, as we've just discussed, sometimes food is just not a thing that happens. But do you specifically enjoy breakfast, or is it just food?
I have real difficulty facing food for at least 2 hours when I've got up.
Interesting. I have a friend who's the same way.
I just can't. I've done it before. I never eat. I never enjoy eating food that quickly after getting up. That's all.
Okay.
I just don't at all. I don't know. It's one of those, even from being a kid, I kind of started skipping breakfast when I was a teenager. I just didn't seem to really, I'm very partial. There's very few things better than a full English breakfast. But I would tend to enjoy that more on I don't know, it just seems a bit of a rush in the week. Weekends, it's fine. All bets are off.
Right.
Fill my belly.
Yeah, I guess, I'm lucky enough that for the time being at least, I just do this so I don't have to rush away to breakfast because I'm bad in the mornings, man. I am so slow to start in the mornings. And if I had a real time limit, I think it would be hard to make, because I have the same thing for breakfast every day when I cook it myself. 2 eggs with also a bunch of egg whites on toasted bread with 2 slices of cheese, nutritional yeast, and hot sauce. That's what I have for breakfast every morning. The same thing every day, the same proportions, 145 grams of egg whites. Literally everything's the same. But if I had to prep all that before going to work at 8 a.m. or something, I would probably just be eating cereal, if not just coffee. So I get it. I love going out for breakfast. If I could afford to go out for breakfast every single day, I absolutely would. And I would have the same thing. Because when I go to Floyd's, I have the same thing. I have 2 eggs, 2 chicken breasts, and unseasoned potatoes. That's it. That's what I have. That's my breakfast. And if I could afford to eat that every single day, I absolutely would. Eating breakfast out is one of my favorite things in the world.
Yes. A full English is nice, but I couldn't do it every day. Well, I could, but I'd probably die.
Yeah. In fairness, my thing is not a full English. Although I'm looking forward to having one of those when I'm in the UK.
You're going to have black pudding on it?
No.
Well, you order it and I'll eat it.
Okay, there we go. When we're in Parameet, you will be my designated black. I'll save it because it's the morning. You won't want it. Actually, who am I kidding? I'm not going to be up in the fucking morning.
I think we'll need a breakfast on the Sunday.
I think so too. I think a couple bottles of paracetamol, some breakfast, maybe a Bloody Mary to help ease the transition.
Lucasade.
Oh, pardon me, Lucasade. I forgot. We're in the homeland here. Oh, and Brittany, one last thing. Again, I love that I'm not the only person who feels that way about Perkins, who's got this memory of it. Like, this is fancy Denny's. This is, because we're 2.5 hours out of town. This is classy food. Like, even going to the Boston Pizza in Salmon Arm was fancy for us in Revelstoke because we didn't have a Boston Pizza. Anyways, it's all small town things, Paul. It's about gradations.
Well, nothing surprises me. There was a queue when a Tango Blast store opened here. All the young people were very excited. What's
Tango Blast?
It's fizzy soda in ice. So it's basically like a fizzy icicle, I believe. I've never tried it. I'm not a big fan of Tango.
Okay. Interesting. Well, I mentioned Rocket Fizz on the recent show. I think it might have even been a patron show, but they're the ones who made that Roddy Piper soda all out of bubblegum.
Yeah.
And Marianne commented and said that I guess Rocket Fizz has a store, I think she said, in LA, because that's where she lives, or near LA. And she said they had a soda called Kitty Piddle that clearly I have to try next time I'm there. All right, we're going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsors, and then we'll be right back.
What is all that racket?
Paul, I got no time to talk. I got to finish building this Muppet trap.
Did you say mousetrap?
Muppet trap.
I'm almost afraid to ask.
You know the Swedish chef? Big mustache, always singing?
Yes.
Well, Cooking healthy food takes too much effort, and ordering takeout is too expensive, so I'm gonna,
Trap the Muppet and make him cook for you.
trap the Muppet and make him cook for me. Yeah.
Bren, if you want to take the work out of eating well, why don't you try HelloFresh?
What's HelloFresh?
HelloFresh delivers farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes right to your doorstep. It's more convenient than grocery shopping and 25% less expensive than a takeout. That's why they're America's #1 meal kit.
I don't know, man. Don't meal kits get boring? Think of all the stuff that little Swedish guy could make for me. Meatballs, berries, meatballs.
You don't know anything about Swedish food, do you?
I do not.
If variety is your thing, HelloFresh offers 40 recipes to choose from weekly. With options to please even the pickiest of eaters, you'll always find meals everyone at the table will enjoy. And if you've got company coming, they'll make entertaining easy with crowd-pleasing selections like their bratwurst bar with caramelised onions, Dijonnaise slaw and pineapple relish, or a snack ball with pretzel bites, spiced bar nuts and hot honey peach jam.
Well, I hate to leave this Muppet Trap half built, but you've got me interested. How do I sign up?
Go to hellofresh.com/ghoststoryguys16 and use code ghoststoryguys16 for 16 free meals plus shipping.
hellofresh.com/ghoststoryguys16 and use code ghoststoryguys16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping? Done. Hey, Paul, past Bren. I'm future Bren. I've come back to say that HelloFresh sent me a box to try out, and I loved it. Neither Nikki and I are big fans of cooking, but HelloFresh's recipe selection made it easy and fun for us to make things we never would have otherwise. The whole pre-portioned ingredient thing also helped us cut our food waste down to almost nothing. I, future Brennan Store, personally recommend them. Now my work here is done, and I must go.
Don't say it.
Say it. Back to the future. Whee!
You've wrote this after watching The Flash, haven't you?
Yes, I did.
It's always the right time deal.
Hey, want to go to Mickey D's for lunch?
Ooh, let's go now.
But it's not lunchtime yet.
If we're going to McDonald's, it's always the right time.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that.
There's a deal for every lunch hour at McDonald's.
Now's the time to get 2 for $3.99. Mix and match a 4-piece McNuggets, a McDouble, a McChicken, or a hot and spicy McChicken. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Single item at regular price.
This is from Alana. And Alana says, Dear Brennan and Paul, not sure if my email from September last year reached you guys, so I thought I would post it here. I just want to say how much I look forward to listening to your podcasts. The night I found Ghost Story Guys at the start of last year was such a highlight. After regularly listening to another podcast, their ads and lack of content finally drove me crazy. So there I was on the hunt on my Google Home device, begging Google to find me a great ghost story podcast, and boom, she gave me you guys. And from you guys, I now have Mysteries and Monsters, The Dark Paranormal, etc., etc. You choose such great stories, and I appreciate them more when you read them. When you both read them. Your audio and production are first class, and the camaraderie between you both is brilliant. Well, thank you, Alana. Not only do you tell great stories, you're also funny, and you really make me laugh. Your continued discussion on dealing with mental health issues has never been more important, and has the ability to help others who may be struggling, as we heard in episode 143. That episode also reminded me of the pain and loss I went through and sometimes still go through when my father took his own life 25 years ago. That's a life sentence for those who are left behind, and has me questioning my own mental health often. This leads me to my question. What do you guys think about mediums/psychics, people who think they can contact the dead? The reason I ask is a few months ago I finally worked up the courage to approach a psychic medium. This woman is supposed to be the best in Sydney, Australia. After watching years ago how John Edwards and James Van Prague, for example, operate with their audiences, I was of the understanding I was only supposed to provide yes or no answers. Well, that's not the experience I had with this woman. The cost was $150 for 1 hour, and I got 31 minutes of bullshit. I know you guys don't judge, and this is a safe place for me to tell you my experience, so I'll ask again. What do you guys think about mediums and psychics, people who think they can contact the dead? Alana, geez, first off, I'm sorry you had that experience. Geez, Paul, I have a lot to say about this, but I've been talking a lot on this show. Why don't you take point here?
Well, I think it is one of those things, as we both are sufferers of mental illness, and we live in a time where it's probably never been more open for a lot of people to finally be honest about how they feel and how they do, and especially for here in the UK, suicide is the biggest killer of people under 35 in our country. It's also the second most prevalent reason for men in their 40s to die in the UK as well. So it's something that's been quite challenging for a lot of people, but things do seem to be turning in a more positive light. And strangely enough, this week in Sheffield, we've got a suicide prevention charity walk going on that's going around certain areas and taking a baton of hope around, and a lot of people are joining and doing the walk, and they're on their way to Manchester, I believe, next as they're walking around. So it's good to get the conversations out and continue to push it, because it's one of those things that I think we've certainly come away from that attitude of when somebody successful or famous takes their own life and people go, oh, why have they done that? That they had everything. And I think sometimes it used to be very difficult to explain to people that even though you may have got everything that may suggest that everything in your life is going great, that doesn't matter when everybody goes away and you're on your Todd. That's usually the worst part. There's always those little voices constantly at any point can pop up, and it's tough. And as we say there, the ramifications for the people that are left behind is even worse. And as somebody that's lost too many friends over the years, the week surrounding my 40th birthday, I had two of my oldest friends take their own lives, one 3 days before and one 3 days afterwards, which was deeply challenging. One wasn't a big surprise. The other one had basically been absolutely fine, moved to Australia, started a new life, got a family, everything seemed to be going absolutely fine. And then his wife got up one morning and found him dead in the garage. So it challenges. I mean, that's 10 years ago, and I still think about it more days than I don't, and I miss them both dearly still, and along with the others that I lost at a younger age. It never gets easier, but that's the thing about grief. And too many people try to put a timescale on things, and it doesn't matter. It never leaves you. You know, even like we're saying here with father dying 25 years ago, it's still there. You can't just go, oh well, it's gone to a certain point. There'll always be a hole when you lose somebody close and dear to you. And I think often we try and fill the hole rather than learn from the hole. And it's a part of you that's gone, and you'll never replace it. And sometimes the hole will get smaller, but it'll never go away. And all you will ever have to do to remember is to close your eyes, and you're there again. And I think too many times people try to push it away and deal with it and think, oh, well, time's a great healer. It is, but it never lessens the loss that you suffer. It just makes us more adept at dealing with those feelings and being able to function going forwards.
I couldn't agree more. On the other hand, to bring things up, let's make fun of psychic mediums.
Well, I went to see one the other week, didn't I?
Oh, you did
talked
too?
About this.
Yeah, how was that? I don't think I heard about it afterwards.
Odd. It was odd, because there was a couple of things that were bang on that were a bit weird, but the vast majority of it was bollocks.
Yeah. That's kind of what I expected. Do you mind? Do you feel comfortable sharing the stuff that was bang on?
Yeah, of course I do. I mean, she kept going on about my dad. I've never met my dad. No idea. My dad's never, as far as I'm aware, he never saw me. You know, he tried to kill us before I was born.
Right.
And never saw him at all. You know, and so it was a bit troubling to hear this, because you know, he's been dead 7 years apparently. No idea. Never had any contact with him in my entire life, and obviously never will.
Yeah,
now.
Fair.
So you know, it is what it is, and I've got relatives all over the place apparently, because he was a bit free and easy, shall we say? But
right.
You know, such is life. But oh well, they'll never meet me, so it doesn't really matter. But so that was a bit troubling, and then she got one of my friends come through who said, "You still think about how he died, don't you? It's what's put you off learning to drive."
Oh.
And I was like, yeah, it did. And she said, well, he's here now. And he said, you need to get your finger out and get on with it. He said, you can't be afraid because of what happened to him. You can move on. And you shouldn't be afraid of learning to drive anymore.
Wow.
And the rest of it was just, the usual. I'm getting somebody coming through, and that could have been my grandma, but it could have been bloody any generic old lady coming for a chat. And she'd said things, but it was just, But when you get two big hits that were quite specific to me, that aren't just generic stuff, then that I found that difficult to brush away, I have to say.
Sure.
But the rest of it was generic nonsense. I wasn't, as always, I wasn't overly impressed. It does remind me of an incident that happened when I was younger, when I went on a family holiday somewhere, and my aunt went to see a fortune teller at Blackpool, I think we were at.
Okay.
That hotbed of psychic ability. And then they came out and they said, oh, and everybody was, oh, how was it? And she was crying. She wouldn't talk about it. And they kept, and obviously later I was intrigued as to what could have upset her so much. And so I obviously earwigged. And they were having a conversation about telling her that somebody very, very close to her would be dying within the next year to 18 months.
Jesus.
And then the following May, my auntie, her sister, passed away.
Yikes.
At 46.
Oh, man.
And at the time, she wasn't ill. Well, she probably was, but we didn't realise she was ill. She'd got an extremely vicious cancer that came to the point that none of us were allowed to see her before she died, because she'd basically lost control of her mental faculties by the end, because it had just riddled her and got into her brain, and she sadly wasn't there. She was just a shell by that point, and we were never allowed to see her, so I didn't see her the last 12 months of her life until she'd passed.
Oh, man. If you don't mind me asking, what'd you pay for the psychic?
Too much. 50 quid.
Okay, so I was going to say, Alana, I generally don't think much of psychics. I have had experiences with people who've said things which I think are credible, but I think you shouldn't pay any more than $50. And I know there's going to be people who are pissed off about that, who are listening. I don't care. If you have this gift, this shouldn't be something you use to make money. Precisely.
It's a gift, so why charge?
Yeah. Like I think something should be given. I think it's important for the exchange of energy. I think you're giving something, so you need to get something. But I don't think you should be charged $150. That's criminal. And honestly, anytime a psychic becomes famous, I think you can probably write them off. What you're asking is one of those questions that I think separate us from other shows, and I think there are going to be people who say, well, Brent, you're being an asshole. Don't you believe in this stuff? And I do, because I've seen things. I was actually just having this conversation with Joseph last night, but I want to believe that our consciousness survives the point of physical death. I genuinely do, because A, I'm afraid of death, and B, I've lost a lot of people who I want to see again. But can they be reached? I don't know. I mean, are psychics talking to something? Yeah, it seems like it. Are they talking to our family members? Hard to say. There's a lot of shit out. Again, if we accept that all this stuff is real, which we do on the show, and because again, I think there's a pretty good chance it is, we have to admit that there's going to be shit out there that wants to lie to us and use us for its own ends. And so I think you have to be careful. I think as with anything, whether you're taking advice from me or Paul or a friend or whoever, even if it's someone you like, you have to take the advice with a grain of salt. You have to kind of use your own intuition. And you can't just take everything they say on board without critical thought. And I think it's the same with psychics. Like if someone's saying, oh, this is, Grandpa from the great beyond, and he's telling you to sell the house and put all your money in Bitcoin, maybe step back from that and go, yeah, is it actually Grandpa? B, if maybe his grandpa's full of shit. Like being dead does not mean you have access to all the knowledge of the world, right? So, yeah, I'm mixed on psychics, Alana, and again, I think if you're going to go, don't pay any more than $50, $75 maybe. And for God's sakes, if they're famous, run the other way, because I just don't think you can be famous doing this and be genuine. Because to be famous, you have to be consistent at a level that I don't think is possible, because I don't think it works like that. All the people I know who are sensitive, it comes and goes. It's not a science. And if you're at that level, you're a performer. And if you're a performer, you have to perform when you are needed to perform. And again, this is a very subtle thing. It is impossible to perform at that, it is impossible to perform on command, I think.
All I'll ever say is that it's a known fact and on record that until Tutankhamun's tomb was discovered, oddly no psychics connected to anybody from Egypt. And then within 10 years of Carter's discovery of the tomb, lots of psychics were suddenly channeling reincarnations of Egyptian princes, which is, some would say, a very cynical way to do it. Or others may say perhaps opening the tomb allowed all the spirits of Egypt free to hang around posh parties in London.
Cough. So, again, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to talk about this. Thank you for sharing this with us, because I know it's not an easy thing. And again, I'm sorry you had that shitty experience with a psychic, because again, it's not that surprising, but I guess if nothing else, $150 is not an unreasonable price for a lesson learned, I guess. And we have one more message for today.
Our final message is from Miss Tessa Marie via YouTube. Oh, just when I thought I couldn't love you guys anymore, Paul comes along and brings us the chorus to Bob Ross' Sex Machine. Absolutely made my night. I've been binge listening to you guys every night for the past few months. I know you hear it a lot, but you guys have really been getting me through a rather difficult time in my life. I can't thank you both enough for your hard work that goes into putting together these wonderful shows. I am truly grateful for the laughs and the scary accounts, incidents, whatever you want to call them. I always hate calling them stories because that gives the notion that they're not real. You guys both have such amazing voices. I always enjoy listening to you guys more than anyone else, especially you, Brennan. I could listen to you read a phone book and think it's hot. Thanks, Brennan's sister.
God, Christ on a bike. I hope my sister never says anything like that about me. Holy shit, Sarah. I know you're listening to this. That's him. You get him. This has got nothing to do with me. Sweet Jesus. Ooh. Surely we've come up with someone better than my sister.
Yeah. See if
Brennan's
my brother
mistress or something.
In.
I don't know. Something.
Thank you for that message, Rihanna.
There we go. That makes more sense.
Yeah. Whereas if my brother sent an email, he'll be saying, that Paul's a bit of a dick, isn't he?
He would never. Or maybe he would. I don't know. We do every now and again. There is a Paul is a dick email, but very rarely. Usually it's Brennan is a dick. We just had another 1-star review on iTunes from someone who's like, they talk too much. Get fucked.
Who's that guy with his fake British accent?
Well, it's funny you say that. I've mentioned to you before, I follow this woman on Instagram. Her name is, I think she goes by Miss Punny Penny, I think is her username. But she's Scottish, and she talks about the Scots language. It's really interesting stuff. It's just cool linguistic shit. But there are people, because apparently the world is full of morons, and she's hit that sort of inflection point where she's really blown up. It's not uncommon for people to accuse her of not really being Scottish. And I think, who the fuck are you? Who would commit to a bit like this? I'm just going to pretend to be Scottish she's been doing this for years. It's only recently she's like, that's caught on. Because that's usually how it works, right? Everyone says, oh, you know, overnight success. But no, usually these people, you grind for years and years. And then if you're lucky, something takes off. So this poor woman has been doing this for a couple of years, educating people on the Scots language, which again, governments have tried to stamp out over the years. And these dildos who just find her while they're on the fucking toilet are like, oh, hey, this must be fake. Yep, that's right. If it's part of history you haven't heard of, it cannot possibly be real. The only thing that's real is what's in front of you. Solipsism the person.
Well, there is that perception, isn't there, that everybody in England speaks like Hugh Grant.
Wait, hang on. Is this not true?
No, it's not. Yes, I put on a rough accent to try and fool Americans. This is how I really speak.
I knew it.
And what I learned at Eton when I was filling my face full of jam tarts and custard, and we drank ginger beer as we went rowing down the river in our boaters. It was a great time.
I was raised in the wrong country, because that sounds great.
Yeah, if you think everybody in England talks like Hugh Grant, get a train to Newcastle and have a wander around there. See how long see how long it is till you can't understand anybody. Right there, Pit. Hey.
I feel like you get on the train, that'd be it. Someone just hits you.
It's like one of those things. It's like how to do a Scouse accent. You can do it if you go, a can of Coke and chicken, can of Coke and some fried chicken.
It sounds like you've worked up to that after years of speech therapy.
Can of Coke and some fried chicken, la. Hey?
I wouldn't even try. I feel like I'd try. It'd be a hate crime.
You just gotta close your throat a bit and go, can of Coke. You gotta talk from the throat.
Can of Coke.
You gotta talk from the throat and pretend you're from Merseyside and go, can of Coke and some fried chicken, pal.
Can of Coke and fried chicken. Coke. Is it working? Where the fuck am I from? What's happening here? It's not working, Paul. It's not working. I've killed Paul, though, so that's good. Nick Pope will be taking his spot at Paramede.
That was a start. That's nearly as good as one of Julie's accents, and I'll usually say, "Where's that from?" And I'll be really confused.
I was up there with Kev's Julie voice from that one ad we did.
Brilliant.
So thank you very much, Tessa, and thank you everyone who wrote in. Again, we had to cut a few folks from the script just because this episode went really long, and this is meant to be a mini show, and this is, so far, it's not really worked out. So, yeah, but again, thank you so much to everyone who wrote to us. Again, ghoststoryguys@gmail.com. If, of course, send us your stories. We'll read them out on a story show. And if you just have a kooky comment or question for this show, send it in. Again, if you comment on YouTube, we'll try and get it in. And really, I want to do a special shout out to Joseph Camo, who obviously is a patron of this show. I shout him out on every episode. But Joseph is the guy who helped us turn around our YouTube channel, and it's growing nicely now. And YouTube was something that was always an afterthought for me. I don't like video. I don't understand it. But Joseph, a couple of years ago, he came to me and said, hey, I do this other YouTube show. It's successful. I like your show. And we'd met through other things, but he really helped me turn around the YouTube channel to the point where we have people commenting on shit, which is always nice. So again, just thanks to Joseph, who eventually will listen. And of course, you can listen to me and Joseph on Weird Together, but that's a whole other thing. Paul, where can everyone find you online, my friend?
You can find me under the guise of Mysteries and Monsters across all social media platforms. Though my Twitter handle is just my name, @PaulBestall, but Mysteries and Monsters is everywhere else. So if you just look for Mysteries and Monsters everywhere, you should find me or the show.
All right. I am Largely the Truth on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. You can find my other show, Weird Together, on podcast platforms everywhere. Again, that is a look at the latest and greatest in independent horror films. Our most recent downloadable episode is Influencer, which is a Shudder original, and our latest live stream, which was last night, is about Brooklyn 45, as I mentioned earlier on the show. You'll find a link to our YouTube page and our RSS feed in the show notes. And finally, before we go, we have a musical guest on this episode. They are Nakatomi Freefall. They're a Vancouver Island-based synthwave group. The song is The Other Side from their latest album, Beauty in the Chaos. And as I mentioned, they are based on Vancouver Island. Nakatomi Freefall is Corey and Margie. And I will put a link to their Instagram account in the show notes. They're always great fun. They always comment on our stuff on Instagram. It's always a hoot. Great people. And so as we finish tonight, we will leave you with Nakatomi Freefall and The Others.
Pulling up to Mickey D's just for drinks? Oh yeah, that's me. Nothing extra, just perfection and a straw. Coming in hot for the coldest cups on the block. Because there are drinks. Then there are drinks from McDonald's.
Get a creamy Oreo frappe or McCafe smoothie for less with 20% off any purchase of $10 or more. Only on the app. Limited time only at participating McDonald's. Valid one time per day. Visit McDonald's app for details.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.